Nestled right in the heart of Colombia lies an absolutely exceptional mountain range called Serranía de la Macarena. These mountains are literally like nothing else on Earth, because they were formed from quartzite rocks that are a mind-boggling 1,200 million years old, meaning they existed way before the very first flower or vertebrate animal ever stepped foot on land. Like, this insanely long geological era makes them a completely silent witness to massive climate shifts and the literal splitting of continents. This range represents the absolute final stretch of the ancient Guiana Shield, meaning this shield actually dates way back to before the Andes Mountains even existed. Plus, the quartzite rocks here are so incredibly tough that they have literally resisted erosion for nearly 1 billion years, all while the much newer mountains around them just completely wore away. And the location of these mountains is just straight up unique, because 3 completely different ecosystems crash right into each other here: the Amazon rainforest, the freezing Andes Mountains, and the grassy Orinoco Plains. Like, if you checked out a map of Colombia, you would see this region as an extraordinary meeting point that you just won't find almost anywhere else on Earth. This incredible environmental overlap has produced a mind-blowing diversity of living creatures, with over 1,200 species of vascular plants recorded in a relatively small area. Like, some specific types of orchids and bromeliads can only be found right here, and the way they adapted to this wild climatic mix is a true masterclass in the sheer complexity of nature. And when it comes to the wildlife, this region is home to around 80 species of butterflies, and some of them haven't even been officially described by science yet. See, these butterflies live in a super tight specific range because they are incredibly sensitive to any tiny shift in temperature or humidity, which makes them a flawless real-time indicator of the health of this totally unique ecosystem. Also, the Cano Cristales River that flows right through these mountains is super famous, but the secret behind its insanely vibrant colors lies entirely in an aquatic plant called Macarena clavigera. See, if you look down into the riverbed during the mild dry season between June and November, you would see these brilliant patches of bright red, pink, yellow, green and blue completely covering the rocks beneath that crystal clear water. And this plant only grows under incredibly precise conditions, because it absolutely needs water that is super low in nutrients, relatively warm and very shallow. Like, if the water chemistry shifted by even a tiny fraction, this plant wouldn't even be able to survive, and that right there explains exactly why this intensely colorful spectacle is never seen in any other river with this same jaw-dropping density. On top of those incredibly colorful plants, the water of Cano Cristales boasts this absolutely exceptional purity, where it is so mind-blowingly clear that you can see right down to the riverbed at depths of over 5 meters. See, this water is almost completely free of mineral sediment and silt, because those quartzite rocks simply do not crumble easily and just don't produce any fine mud at all. Scientists have discovered that this river undergoes an incredibly precise, annual biological cycle, where the aquatic plant grows during the rainy season and then explodes into those vibrant colors right at the start of the dry spell. Then it completely vanishes when the drought hits its peak, only to make a total comeback after the very next rains. And that jaw-dropping synchronization with the changing climate is definitely no accident. Geologically speaking, the quartzite rocks here hold tiny zircon crystals inside them that have allowed scientists to pin down their age to a precise 1.2 billion years. Like, these grains contain uranium that decays into lead at a perfectly steady, locked-in rate, which essentially turns them into a natural atomic clock that records geological time with practically zero room for error. And these mountains were actually submerged under an ancient shallow sea before tectonic forces pushed them all the way up. In fact, today we can find fossils of microscopic marine organisms like stromatolites, which are rock columns formed by incredibly ancient cyanobacteria. If you were to look closely at the rock layers, you would see these columns preserved like stone books, telling the epic story of a primordial ocean. This incredibly long geological stability essentially turned the region into a safe haven for plant and animal species that completely went extinct everywhere else. In fact, some of the insects and spiders here are literal living fossils, whose forms haven't changed even a tiny bit for tens of millions of years. See, the way these mountains were isolated from rapid climate shifts or destructive earthquakes acted as a perfect protective incubator to keep these ancient creatures alive and well. On top of all that, these mountains hide secret caves and waterfalls that only a handful of researchers have ever studied, purely because getting to them is a total nightmare. Take the Blue Curtain waterfall, for instance. It plummets from a height of 80 meters straight into a completely enclosed rocky chasm, where the water smashes against pure quartzite to create a mist that is entirely free of salts. This has generated a hyper-isolated micro-ecosystem of unique mosses and algae that survive purely on that pristine humidity alone. Colombia actually declared this region a protected area all the way back in 1948, but major challenges still persist due to climate change and illegal human activities. In fact, it's been observed that the colorful season in Cano Cristales has become a full 10 days shorter than it was just 40 years ago. This heartbreaking shift is definitive proof of the sheer fragility of this natural treasure, which took an entire billion years to create. In conclusion, the Serranía de la Macarena mountain range remains an open, natural laboratory that unlocks the deepest secrets of Earth's ancient history and the pure complexity of life. Every single rock, plant, and river inside it represents a chapter of an epic, ongoing story that never ceases to amaze. If you ever want to see with your own eyes exactly what the Earth looked like before modern continents even existed, this place is literally the closest you can possibly get to stepping right into that ancient, distant time.